These killer kids get destroyed by their own blood in court, proving that blood isn't thicker than justice. From Grace's entire family ratting her out for killing her parents,
then I cannot ignore the real possibility that she could pose a threat to those of us left behind.
To Jennifer Pan's dad, exposing his daughter's lies. Let's dive into cases where parents became their own children's worst nightmare, beginning with Sarah Grace Patrick, when grandma says no to bail. Kim Bowling's testimony absolutely obliterated her step-niece's chances of freedom, and honestly, it was brutal to watch.
If she's released, she will continue this behavior to silence anyone who could testify against her. My third concern is evidence. The brutality of these murders is not in dispute. My family and I have seen the death certificates, and although we are not aware of exactly how many shots were fired, we do know that there were multiple gunshots.
The 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick thought she had it all figured out when she allegedly shot her mother Kristen Brock and stepfather James Brock while they slept on February 20th, 2025. But what she didn't count on was her own family turning into prosecutors. At the August 20th bond hearing, Kim Bowling delivered testimony that would make any defense attorney's blood run cold. Standing before Judge Dustin Hightower, this grieving sister didn't mince words. She painted Sarah not as a troubled teen, but as a calculating killer who posed an active threat to everyone around her. The prosecution had argued that Sarah was dangerous, but family testimony hit different. When Kim stated she feared for her safety and that of her family, it wasn't just legal theater. This was genuine terror from someone who knew the defendant intimately. The emotional weight of a family member expressing such fear carried more impact than any expert testimony could. But Kim wasn't done. She told the court that Sarah had access to financial resources that would enable her to flee, systematically dismantling every argument the defense had made about her being a low-flight risk. When your own family is basically building the prosecution's case for them, you know you're in deep trouble. Stepbrother Tristan Brock piled on, calling Sarah an absolute flight risk and describing his father as his Superman. The courtroom atmosphere was described as a divided family nightmare, with supporters wearing "I Stand With Sarah" shirts, while James's relatives painted her as a manipulative monster. Judge Hightower denied bond, citing the family's testimony about witness intimidation concerns, particularly regarding the 6-year-old sister who discovered the bodies. Sarah had initially smiled in court, but was reportedly weeping by the end of the hearing as her own family's words sealed her fate. But Sarah wasn't the only one betrayed by sibling testimony in a murder trial. In fact, this time, the betrayal came from a sibling who had been attacked and left to die. Raymond Childs III, brother versus brother courtroom showdown. Xavier Childs became the star witness who single-handedly destroyed his older brother's life, and let's be honest, it was both heartbreaking and necessary. When 17-year-old Raymond Childs III decided to solve a curfew argument with bullets instead of conversation, he probably didn't expect his 15-year-old brother to survive and become his worst nightmare in court. The January 24, 2021 massacre left 5 family members dead, but Xavier's survival became Raymond's undoing. This kid literally crawled to safety after being shot twice, made it to a neighbor's porch, and immediately identified his brother as the shooter. Talk about sibling rivalry taken to the absolute extreme. The first trial in July 2023 turned into a complete circus when cousin Elanso Valles violated court protocol by directly confronting Raymond, asking, "Why did you do it?" This outburst was deemed so prejudicial that Judge Chris Miller declared a mistrial, but Xavier's testimony had already done the damage. By the second trial in October 2024, Xavier was ready to finish what he started. According to the prosecution, Xavier said,
"He hid in the nearby laundry room and listened as there was a brief struggle before his brother shot their parents to death. He heard his father's last words, 'I love you, Raymond.'"
This wasn't just testimony. It was a 15-year-old boy forced to relive the worst night of his life to put his own brother behind bars. The prosecution called Xavier's testimony the key to their case, and they weren't wrong. When your own brother describes you methodically moving room to room, shooting family members execution style, there's not much wiggle room for the defense. Even Raymond's mother, Rhonda Smith, testified for the defense, claiming abuse and PTSD, but her efforts were completely overwhelmed by Xavier's direct identification. The jury took just 3 hours to convict Raymond on all counts, leading to a 360-year sentence. Xavier's bravery was commended by police, but imagine being the kid who put his own brother away for life. The courtroom drama was so intense that media described it as an unimaginable tragedy where family betrayal became the path to justice. While Xavier chose justice over blood, some parents faced the impossible choice between law and loyalty. Howell Donaldson III, when mom and dad choose justice over blood. The parents of Howell Donaldson III faced the ultimate test of civic duty versus parental loyalty, and initially they chose their son over justice. But the legal system had other plans, and watching this family drama unfold was like witnessing a slow-motion car crash between love and law. When 24-year-old Howell was arrested for the Seminole Heights serial killings that terrorized Tampa in 2017, his parents Howell Jr. and Rosita initially refused to testify against their son, repeatedly stating, "With all due respect, I refuse to answer the question," during depositions. Their lawyer Ralph Fernandez summed it up perfectly when he said they weren't going to be witnesses against their baby. But here's where it gets spicy. Florida doesn't recognize parent-child testimonial privilege in criminal cases. Judge Mark Wolf held them in contempt and placed them under house arrest with GPS monitors, allowing them to leave only for medical, religious, or employment purposes. Imagine being under house arrest because you won't rat out your serial killer son. The parents eventually caved and submitted a sworn affidavit addressing prosecutors' questions about Howell's whereabouts and mental health, confirming they had no information that would help his case. State Attorney Andrew Warren got what the community was entitled to, even if it came through legal coercion rather than parental cooperation. The real kicker was that it was actually Howell's McDonald's manager, DeLonda Walker, who became the hero of this story. She alerted police when Howell handed her a bag containing the murder weapon, earning herself a $110,000 reward while his own parents were fighting subpoenas. Howell was convicted and sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences, with the prosecution's case built on forensic evidence rather than parental testimony. The parents' initial refusal and subsequent forced cooperation became a footnote in a case where biological loyalty clashed with legal obligation and the law ultimately won. But sometimes, surviving family members also become the most powerful witnesses against their own children. Jennifer Pan, dad survives to testify against his daughter. Hui Hanpan's testimony absolutely demolished his daughter Jennifer's carefully constructed lies, and watching a father destroy his own child's defense was both fascinating and horrifying. The 24-year-old thought she had orchestrated the perfect murder-for-hire plot, but she made one critical mistake. She didn't ensure her father was actually dead. The November 8th, 2010 home invasion in Markham, Ontario was supposed to look like a robbery gone wrong. Jennifer claimed she was tied to the banister while 3 masked men killed her mother, Bitch Ha, and shot her father.
And then I heard 2 pops. My mom screamed.
But Han's survival turned him into the prosecution's most devastating witness. During his March 2014 testimony, Han delivered the knockout punch that ended Jennifer's charade. He told the court he saw Jennifer walking around freely, talking to the intruders like they were friends, completely contradicting her victim narrative. This wasn't a traumatized daughter. This was the mastermind caught red-handed by her own father. The impact was immediate and devastating. Han's testimony prompted Jennifer's 3rd police interrogation, where she finally confessed to hiring the hitmen. When your own father, the man you tried to kill, becomes the star witness against you, there's really nowhere to hide. Jennifer's motive stemmed from her parents' ultimatum about her relationship with Daniel Wong: choose family or choose him. She chose murder instead. Her elaborate web of lies about attending university, working at a hospital, and being the perfect daughter crumbled when Han described years of deception and the final confrontation that led to the hit. The jury convicted Jennifer and her co-conspirators of first-degree murder, but the case continues to evolve. A 2023 appeal court ordered a retrial for first-degree murder, though the attempted murder conviction stands. Han's victim impact statement, read at sentencing, captured the full tragedy. "When I lost my wife, I lost my daughter at the same time." Next up, we see how parental love takes an even more extraordinary form: forgiveness in the face of ultimate betrayal. Thomas Bartlett Whitaker, father's mercy couldn't save his son. Kent Whitaker's testimony during his son's capital murder trial was a masterclass in grace under pressure, but even a father's forgiveness couldn't overcome the mountain of evidence against 23-year-old Thomas Bartlett Whitaker. This case perfectly illustrates how parental love can become both a shield and a sword in the courtroom. The December 10, 2003 ambush in Sugar Land, Texas was supposed to look like a home invasion, but Kent's survival testimony revealed the truth about his son's elaborate murder-for-hire scheme. Bart had orchestrated the deaths of his mother Tricia and brother Kevin over a $14 million estate, all while staging a fake graduation celebration. During the guilt phase, Kent recounted the horrific night when he heard Tricia's last wet coughs and saw Kevin's body, but it was during the punishment phase where his testimony became truly remarkable. Instead of demanding vengeance, this man who lost his wife and youngest son begged for mercy, telling the jury, "I've lost my wife and son. I don't want to lose another." Kent's Christian faith drove his testimony as he forgave Bart publicly, even describing the changes he'd seen in his son after 11 years in prison, but the jury wasn't buying it. Prosecutor Fred Felkman dismissed Kent's plea, noting he hadn't met anyone besides Kent who thought justice hadn't been served. The forensic evidence was overwhelming, ballistics matched the hitman's weapon, and Stephen Champagne's testimony revealed Bart's promise to split the insurance money. Bart was sentenced to death despite his father's emotional appeal, proving that sometimes even a parent's testimony for their child isn't enough. The real victory came in 2018 when Kent's relentless advocacy helped secure a commutation 40 minutes before Bart's execution. Governor Greg Abbott cited 3 factors, including Kent's passionate opposition as the surviving victim. Kent's testimony may not have prevented the death sentence, but it ultimately saved his son's life. But not all cases rely on family testimony. Sometimes science speaks louder than any witness. Sarah Marie Johnson, DNA evidence speaks louder than denials. The DNA evidence against 16-year-old Sarah Marie Johnson was so overwhelming that even her own grandmother admitted it took a lot to convince a grandma, and in this Bellevue, Idaho case, the forensics absolutely destroyed any hope of reasonable doubt. Sarah thought she could cover her tracks after shooting her parents, but modern science had other plans. The September 2, 2003 murders of Alan Scott Johnson and Diane Johnson were initially puzzling to investigators. Sarah claimed an intruder had killed her parents while she slept, playing the role of the grieving daughter to perfection, but Sheriff Walt Femling noticed something off about her behavior, a coldness that didn't match the tragedy she claimed to have discovered. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a garbage truck. Sheriff Femling had the brilliant foresight to stop the waste collection during the crime scene. Lockdown, and what they found in the trash can outside the Johnson home was a prosecutor's dream. A pink bathrobe, latex glove, and leather glove, all containing the smoking gun evidence. Forensic scientist Cynthia Hall's testimony was the nail in Sarah's coffin. Sarah's DNA was found inside the latex glove, alongside blood from both victims. The matching leather glove in Sarah's bedroom had gunshot residue, and the bathrobe contained DNA from all 3 family members. When the state lab confirmed Sarah's DNA inside the glove, investigators knew they had their killer. The defense tried the no blood, no guilt strategy, arguing that Sarah would have been covered in blood after such violent shootings. Blood spatter expert Rod Englert demolished this theory, explaining how the protective clothing caught the spatter and the bolt-action rifle minimized blowback. The forensics painted a picture of premeditation, not spontaneous violence. Sarah was convicted and sentenced to life without parole, with the forensic evidence overwhelming any sympathy for her youth. Her motive, anger over her parents' disapproval of her relationship with a 19-year-old drug dealer, seemed petty compared to the brutal execution-style killings revealed by the autopsy evidence. Next, we uncover how forensic evidence would prove equally damning in another case of elaborate deception and brutal murder. Chandler Halderson, when lies meet forensic science. The forensic evidence against 23-year-old Chandler Halderson was so damning that his defense team could only argue he was a liar, not a killer. But when you're caught with your parents' DNA literally on your shoes, that's a tough sell to make. This Wisconsin case became a masterclass in how forensic science can expose even the most elaborate deceptions. Chandler's house of cards began tumbling when his father, Bart, discovered his lies about attending college and working at SpaceX. The last text message Bart sent was, "I'm ready whenever you are," at 2:10 p.m. on July 1, 2021, before a 3 p.m. meeting with college officials to expose Chandler's deception. That meeting never happened because Bart was already dead. The autopsy evidence was chilling. Dr. Corey Breslauer found 3 close-range gunshot wounds to Bart's back and chest, indicating execution-style killing. The dismemberment occurred post-mortem, with evidence showing Chandler used multiple handsaws to methodically destroy the evidence of his crimes. But it was the DNA evidence that sealed Chandler's fate. Forensic scientist Denise Jones testified that both parents' DNA was found on various tools and a Brooks shoe, with Chandler's DNA inside the shoe. Blood from both victims was on the sole, directly placing him at the scene of dismemberment. When your DNA is mixed with your parents' blood on murder weapons, the defense options become pretty limited. The bone fragments found in the family fireplace added another horrifying layer. Special Agent William Boswell described over 200 human bone fragments with a distinctive barbecued pig odor, evidence that Chandler had tried to burn away outweigh his crimes. The forensic anthropology testimony revealed the systematic nature of the dismemberment, showing this wasn't a crime of passion but calculated destruction. The jury deliberated for just 2 hours before convicting Chandler on all counts, leading to life without parole. The forensic evidence was so overwhelming that even the defense admitted Chandler was a pathological liar. They just couldn't overcome the scientific proof that he was also a cold-blooded killer. While forensics destroyed some defenses, other cases show how family testimony creates complex courtroom dynamics. Menendez brothers' cousins couldn't save them. The Menendez brothers' cousin testimony provided rare third-party corroboration of alleged abuse, but in the end, forensic evidence and prosecutorial strategy overwhelmed their family support. This Beverly Hills case shows how even sympathetic family testimony can't overcome damning physical evidence and courtroom limitations. Andy Cano and Diane van der Molen were the defense's secret weapons in the first trial. Andy testified that Eric had confided in him about Jose's sexual abuse at age 13, describing uncomfortable massages in the shower. Diane recalled 8-year-old Lyle climbing into her bed, scared and saying Jose was touching him down there, with Kitty angrily dismissing the claims. The cousin's testimony was emotionally powerful and provided the only external validation of the brothers' abuse claims. Andy's tears and Diane's account of reporting to Kitty created a narrative of family dysfunction that resonated with some jurors, particularly on Eric's jury, contributing to the hung jury that ended the first trial. But the second trial was a different beast entirely. Judge Weisberg severely limited the cousins' testimony as hearsay, neutering their impact and forcing the defense to focus on narrow legal arguments rather than the broader abuse narrative. Without their full accounts, the brothers' claims lacked external support. The forensic evidence told a different story entirely. Jose suffered 15 shotgun wounds, including close-range shots to the head, while Kitty had 10 wounds with multiple reloads, indicating premeditation and execution rather than self-defense. Crime scene reconstruction showed no struggle, with blood spatter patterns confirming an ambush. The jury convicted both brothers of first-degree murder in March 1996, sentencing them to life without parole. The cousins' testimony, while heartfelt, couldn't overcome the cold, hard facts of forensic science and judicial limitations. Recent documentaries and new evidence have revived interest in their claims, but the convictions stand as testament to how courtroom rules and physical evidence can trump even the most compelling family support. Our next case shows how mental illness defenses face similar challenges when confronting overwhelming forensic evidence. Kip Kinkle, forensic evidence overwhelms mental illness claims. The forensic evidence against 15-year-old Kipland Kinkle was so overwhelming that his defense team abandoned any hope of trial, leading to a guilty plea and a sentence that effectively ended his life before it began. This Springfield, Oregon case demonstrates how even legitimate mental illness claims crumble when faced with meticulous forensic reconstruction. The May 20th through 21st, 1998 crime spree began with parricide and escalated to school shooting, but it was the autopsy evidence that sealed Kip's fate. Bill Kinkle died from a single .22 caliber gunshot to the forehead at close range, while Faith suffered 6 shots, including 3 to the head and 1 to the heart. The precision and multiplicity of wounds showed this wasn't a psychotic break, it was execution. Ballistics evidence connected the same .22 caliber Ruger rifle to both crime scenes. Over 50 shell casings in the school cafeteria matched the weapons found with Kip's fingerprints, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. The blood spatter patterns in the Kinkle home showed close-range shooting with no defensive wounds, indicating surprise attacks, but it was Kip's own words that provided the most damning evidence. His journals detailed explicit plans to kill everyone, with references to voices commanding violence, while his recorded confession aligned perfectly with the forensic timeline. When psychological evidence matches physical evidence so perfectly, defense options become extremely limited. The defense argued schizophrenia and auditory hallucinations drove the crimes, supported by psychiatric evaluations. But the forensic evidence painted a picture of deliberate planning, stockpiled ammunition, covered bodies, and methodical weapon placement that suggested awareness and intent, rather than psychotic disorganization. Judge Jack Mattison sentenced Kip to 111 years without parole, acknowledging the schizophrenia but prioritizing public safety. The forensic evidence was simply too strong to allow mental illness to excuse such calculated violence. Recent resentencing efforts based on juvenile justice reforms continue, but the original conviction stands as a testament to forensic science's power to reveal intent behind even the most disturbed actions. Another case would prove that mental health defenses crumble against brutal physical evidence. Tyler Hadley, when physical evidence trumps mental health. The autopsy evidence against 17-year-old Tyler Hadley was so brutal that even his defense team had to admit guilt, focusing instead on mental illness mitigation in this Port St. Lucie case that shocked Florida. Sometimes the forensic evidence is so overwhelming that the only question becomes punishment, not guilt. The July 16, 2011 Hammer murders were discovered after the most bizarre crime scene in recent memory, a house party with the victims' bodies hidden in the master bedroom. Assistant medical examiner Linda O'Neill's testimony revealed Mary Jo Hadley endured 36 blunt force trauma injuries, with the critical detail that she was alive during every blow, indicating prolonged suffering. Blake Hadley's autopsy by Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Roger Mittelman showed 39 blunt force injuries, including defensive wounds, proving he fought for his life. The 17-inch claw hammer found between their bodies was covered in blood and tissue matching both victims, with Tyler's fingerprints sealing the forensic case. The blood spatter evidence told the complete story of the attacks. Extensive high-velocity spatter in the family room showed the location of Mary Jo's assault, while medium-velocity patterns from Blake's defensive wounds confirmed his struggle. The cleanup attempt using bleach and towels demonstrated consciousness of guilt and planning. Tyler's digital footprint provided additional damning evidence. Facebook posts at 12:15 and 8:15 p.m. advertising the party, combined with ATM footage showing him withdrawing $5,000 for supplies, proved premeditation and callous disregard for his victims. The defense argued major depressive disorder and psychotic thinking, with expert testimony about the effects of ecstasy and childhood trauma. But the forensic evidence showed a deliberate, prolonged attack followed by calculated concealment and celebration. Mental illness couldn't explain away 36 and 39 hammer blows. Judge Robert Meckhamson sentenced Tyler to consecutive life sentences, calling the murders brutal, heinous, and premeditated. The 2018 resentencing added review eligibility after 25 years due to juvenile justice reforms, but the forensic evidence ensures Tyler will likely never see freedom. But in some cases, masterminds think they can stay clean while others do the dirty work. Nicole Kasinskas, forensic evidence convicts, despite absent killer. The forensic evidence against 16-year-old Nicole Kasinskas proved that you don't need to pull the trigger to be destroyed by physical evidence, and this Nashua, New Hampshire case shows how autopsy findings can convict even those who weren't present during the actual killing. Sometimes being the mastermind is worse than being the muscle. The August 6, 2003 murder of Jean Domenico was a study in overkill that the forensic evidence laid bare in devastating detail. The autopsy revealed Jean died from multiple stab wounds, over 40 strikes with 3 different knives, plus blunt force trauma from a baseball bat. The sheer brutality contradicted any claim of spontaneous violence. Nicole wasn't even present during the killing, waiting at a nearby 7-Eleven while her boyfriend Billy Sullivan Jr. did the bloody work, but her role in the conspiracy was proven when she returned to step over her mother's body and fetch a cloth to help Sullivan clean blood from the scene. Physical evidence doesn't lie about complicity. The forensic reconstruction painted a picture of premeditated violence. Defensive wounds on Jean's arms showed she fought back during the attack, while blood spatter patterns confirmed close-range stabbing. The use of multiple knives indicated Sullivan's determination to ensure death, supporting the prosecution's conspiracy theory. But it was the history of failed attempts that really sealed Nicole's fate. The couple had previously tried poisoning Jeanne's coffee, setting her bedroom on fire, and planning to blow up the house's oil tank, proving this wasn't a crime of passion, but the culmination of sustained homicidal planning. Nicole's plea deal required her to testify against Sullivan, detailing their conspiracy and her role in facilitating the murder. The forensic evidence corroborated every aspect of her testimony, ensuring both convictions despite her physical absence from the killing. Judge William Groff sentenced Nicole to 40 years to life, stating, "The murder of your mother wouldn't have happened without your complicity." She was granted parole in August 2025 after serving 22 years, but the forensic evidence that convicted her remains a testament to how physical evidence can prove conspiracy even when the mastermind keeps their hands clean. Coming right up, we see how family testimony dynamics become even more complex when cases stretch across decades. Freeman brothers' extended family testimony seals their fate. The Freeman brothers case demonstrates how extended family testimony can provide the final push toward conviction, even decades after the original crime. Brian and David Freeman's 1995 parricide in Pennsylvania became a study in how family dynamics play out in courtroom drama across multiple decades. The February 26, 1995 murders were discovered by Valerie Freeman, Dennis's sister, who found the blood-soaked scene after Eric failed to visit as planned. Her testimony established the timeline and brutality of the crime, with blood spatter and bone fragments covering walls and floors in what investigators described as one of the worst crime scenes they'd encountered. During the 2024 resentencing hearing, Valerie's testimony took on new significance. She recounted finding Eric tied to a chair in the garage, indicating prior abuse by his brothers, and described moving out of the family home after an argument with David because Dennis feared for her safety. Her skepticism about their rehabilitation was palpable when she stated she was untroubled by the prospect of them serving life terms. The forensic evidence supported Valerie's accounts of violence. Autopsies confirmed Brenda died from stab wounds and blunt trauma from a barbell, Dennis from fatal skull fractures from a baseball bat, and Eric from pickaxe wounds. The blood-covered weapons and DNA evidence on Birdwell's t-shirt matching Dennis's blood created an unbreakable forensic chain, but it was the family division that created courtroom drama. Sandy Lettish, Brenda's sister, offered contrasting testimony, saying she forgave the brothers after 8 years and believed they were rehabilitated. She visited them regularly and noted their remorse, with Brian becoming a baptized Jehovah's Witness and David softening from his cold-eyed demeanor. Judge Douglas Reichley acknowledged the family divide in his February 2024 resentencing, stating, "No matter what decision was made, someone is going to feel as though justice was not done today." The competing family testimonies, Valerie's continued fear versus Sandy's forgiveness, created a complex emotional landscape that influenced his decision to grant parole eligibility in 2055. The forensic evidence from 1995 remained unchanged, but the family testimony evolution showed how time can shift perspectives while physical evidence remains constant. The brothers' fate now hinges on parole boards decades in the future, but their convictions stand as testament to how family testimony can both condemn and potentially redeem. But perhaps the most shocking case involves family testimony that accidentally helped the defendant escape justice. Casey Anthony, when parents can't save their child. George and Cindy Anthony's testimony created a prosecution nightmare that accidentally helped their daughter escape murder charges, proving that sometimes parental testimony can backfire in spectacular fashion. This Orlando case became a masterclass in how family loyalty can undermine justice while trying to serve it. The prosecution's case seemed bulletproof. George's testimony about the dead body smell in Casey's car was devastating, based on his police experience. His emotional breakdown over Kaylee's photos, contrasting with Casey's stoicism, should have sealed the deal. Cindy's frantic 911 call reporting the car smell and Kaylee's absence provided equally damning evidence. But then Cindy dropped a bombshell that changed everything. She claimed she made the computer searches for chloroform, not Casey, attributing them to researching chlorophyll for her dogs. This testimony, though doubted by experts due to misspellings and browser history, introduced reasonable doubt about Casey's intent to harm Kaylee. The autopsy evidence should have been conclusive. Dr. Jan Garavaglia testified that Kaylee's death was homicide due to duct tape placement, while entomologist Dr. Neil Haskell confirmed the body was in Casey's trunk. But without a determinable cause of death due to decomposition, the forensic case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. The defense's accusations against George created additional family drama, claiming he molested Casey and knew about Kaylee's accidental drowning. George's vehement denials, "That's a lie," were described as explosive, but the unproven allegations planted doubt in some jurors' minds about family dynamics and truthfulness. The jury's acquittal on July 5, 2011, shocked the nation, with 64% of Americans believing Casey was guilty. Juror Jennifer Ford later told ABC News they couldn't say beyond reasonable doubt that Casey killed Kaylee, citing Cindy's chloroform claim and lack of direct evidence. George and Cindy's testimony, meant to convict, accidentally created the reasonable doubt that freed their daughter. We've come to the end of the clip. To stay connected for more of such chilling crime content, click on the card showing on the screen.